Having to deal with the realities of the pandemic, including hybrid learning, a loss of staff due to COVID-19, and adhering to safety measures for months. Well, these are just some of the conditions under which matriculants of this year have to write their matric exams. Dr. Janet Viljoen, counsellor and academic specialist at Boston Media House, joins us now to expand on how pupils can cope with anxiety. Dr. Viljoen, a very good afternoon to you. Now, when we talk of anxiety, what exactly do we mean? Is it just nervousness before a big event or a big incident, such as the writing of exams?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. The causes of anxiety may be many different ones. For example, in the case of exams, it could be a feeling of being underprepared. We can't underestimate the effect that COVID-19 and the lockdowns have had on our schooling system and on our learners, and we need to be sensitive to that. Now, you spoke about nervousness versus anxiety. So nervousness is quite a healthy feeling. In fact, it keeps us sharp. It probably helps us focus and concentrate better. But as soon as that crosses into the territory of anxiety, which is that racing heart rate, the sweaty palms, where your mind just goes blank, that's when it's perhaps a little bit more concerning, and that could affect your performance on the exam. So it's good to learn strategies of how to cope if your anxiety reaches those levels.
So we'll talk about the strategies of dealing with anxiety in just a moment. But for a learner, how do you differentiate whether what you're experiencing is common cause nervousness or whether it's something more serious like anxiety?
I think it's those physiological symptoms that you'll feel. There's a law called the Jerks Dodson Law, which states that as our nervousness increases, so our performance increases, but only up to a point. So you will know if you've passed that point, if you can no longer really control your thoughts are racing, you're having a panic, you're panicking about the future, you might be thinking beyond the exam to what it portends. So what does this mean for the rest of my life? And you might be sort of spiraling into a negative thought pattern pertaining to that. That combined with what some people often experience is chest pain, combined with a racing heart rate, and perhaps feelings of faintness. And all of those are, in fact, indicators that you have crossed over from that healthy nervousness into the negative terrain.
And so how does one then deal with anxiety when you feel it creeping up on you?
So if we're talking about exams, which I think is uppermost in most people's minds at the moment, I think being practical is perhaps one of the best pieces of advice one can give, and that is organizing your time. Make sure that you're creating little timetables for studying. You're allowing sufficient flexibility in your study timetable. Don't try to sit for long periods of time, solid blocks of study time without breaks. It's really important to take a break, take a walk outside, take some deep breaths, have a snack, drink some water, and just come back to it after that, rather than pushing yourself through hours and hours of studying, which ultimately over time becomes less and less effective. Another thing that is really important to try and do to manage your anxiety is to get enough sleep. We all fall into the trap of wanting to pull an all-nighter before a big exam, but it's really not helpful, and it really actually can create a situation of you going blank as you sit down for the exam. So a good night's rest is important. And then in the morning of the exam, don't try to cram a whole lot in that half an hour before you enter the exam hall. That's also likely to contribute to you forgetting the stuff that you'd been revising for the past few days so well. And I think also go back to basics. As you sit down in the exam hall, deep breaths. It's quite a common thing that when we panic and get anxious, we forget to breathe, or we breathe very shallowly. That's not great. So take the deep breaths and just focus yourself and focus on yourself, your paper, and what you're doing. The person next to you who's scribbling away and writing 100 words a minute might distract you, but also you might end up feeling, oh dear, I don't know as much as that person, and that can send you into a panic spiral too. So be very focused on what your intention is, your exam game plan, and what you're aiming to achieve in the allotted time.
You mentioned the issue of time, which in itself just brings a lot of pressure. How does one best manage their time when you're actually sitting down with that exam paper in front of you?
That's a very good question, and I think that's extremely important to remember in that moment of panic and anxiety as the paper is handed to you and put on the desk in front of you, and you kind of have that gasp moment. Very important is to slow down. The worst thing you can do is just open that paper and start writing. Have a look through it. Note those questions which you feel more confident with and those questions that you feel a little bit perhaps less confident with. And then start doing very simple notes. Spider diagrams are quite good. Question 1, this is what I'm going to write, a couple of notes. It'll get your mind flowing. It'll start to calm you down, and it will start to focus you. What you should also do, and be very careful to achieve this, is you know how long that exam is going to last. It could be 3 hours, it could be 2 hours, and you know how many questions are on that exam paper. Don't dwell too long on one or other question. Divvy your time up accordingly and be quite strict with yourself. Rather leave time at the end for you to go back to a question than spend all your time on question 1 and forget about questions 2 to 5.
Isn't that time consuming in and of itself, going through the entire question paper and trying to discern how much time you have for each question?
It is true, but I think it's time that is valuable and well spent, and generally exams build in a 10 to 15 minute reading period into the whole exam time, so that should be available to you.
If one has a quote-unquote panic attack while you're sitting in the exam room, how does one deal with it?
That's a very good question. And first off, I think it's important to say that we must just remember that panic attacks do happen, anxiety does spiral, and if it happens to you, you're not alone. It happens to many of us. So if it happens to you, I think the first thing you need to do is just stop and focus on counting your breaths. Breathe deeply and count them. And so that focus on counting 1, 2, 3 will actually just calm your mind a little bit and give you some space to think. Once you've done that, just do a stretch. You're sitting in your chair, you can just stretch your upper body, do a bit of a stretch, move those muscles. That'll also just start to relax your body because that anxiety becomes very physical. And once you've done that, take a sip of water. It's a great idea to take some water with you. Take a sip of water, take another deep breath, and look back at that paper and try not to focus on everyone around you.
How can parents assist learners in the days and hours leading up to the final exams?
Support is so important, and parents and guardians, if they could do small things such as learn their child's exam timetable. Nice things are to put it up on the fridge, make it central to the planning for the week. Understand when they will be in the exam room and when they will be writing and when they'll be studying, and kind of show a nice interest in what they're doing. That will be one thing. And another is to encourage your learner, your child, and support them to be present at each exam paper. Anxiety and stress may encourage the learner to choose not to go to write the exam or to think that it might be better if they don't. But it's always better to face it and to at least sit and try, and so please support them in that. And I think assist your learner with doing simple things like making a checklist of the requirements that they will need for each exam. For example, if it's a maths exam, they would probably need a calculator and other mathematical equipment. make sure that that's prepared the day before and that everything is in working order so that we don't get to the exam and find the calculator's battery is flat or the pens aren't working. That can just add to a stressful situation. And very importantly, at the end of the day, when your child comes home after a very tough day and a hard exam, listen to them. Let them debrief. Let them tell you about what was hard, what was easy, what they found good, bad, and then move it forward to, okay, now we've got another exam coming up tomorrow or the next week or whatever. Let's look toward that.
Dr. Janet Viljoen, thank you so much. Really important tips there for all of our matriculants who start writing their final matric exams. Thank you very much for those tips. That's Dr. Janet Viljoen, counsellor and academic specialist at Boston Media House. And to all of our matriculants, when you start writing tomorrow, which is Wednesday, the 27th of October, all the way up to the 7th of December, we wish you the best of luck. Every single thing that you've learned throughout the year, may you recall it in excellence, and may you even astound yourself with just how well you do. And if you are a parent or a guardian to somebody who's writing, just remember what they're going through and be as much of a supportive system to them as you possibly can be. So good luck to all the matriculants. Coming up, though, in just a moment, we'll take a look at some of your business stories right here.